This is the year of 2010. Everybody's talking about New Year resolutions and about a new year. I know that every new year we all try to look at our lives and try to see what we can do differently or what we can continue doing. Like everybody else, I'm guilty of coming up with so much stuff that I want to do that I never really get around to doing. I remember on 31st, I was sitting right here in my house thinking about the year ahead and what I could do differently. I didn't really come up with a list as I used to sometimes before. The only thing that I said is that this year I'd like to face it a little bit more head on, because looking at this year, looking at 2010, I realized that we have so much ahead of us, so much that we need to do. Now this year has come hot on the heels of the failed Copenhagen conference, where there were so many high expectations from world leaders. But personally I was a bit skeptical, not necessarily to the event as such, but to the whole notion that every once in a while you can gather these world leaders together and people together to make decisions on behalf of the world. Now I know that in many cases there's been a lot of lobbying and a lot of times these leaders are, bringing on board the expectations of their own people. And I think that's where you have a problem, because every time you have all these competing interests from all these leaders and all these people in the world, then at the very best, I think you can come up with a decision that appears to have the best interests of the world. But really when people go back home, when they go back to the nuts and bolts of governing, I think it's so hard to even keep this promise, even if we have a great promise at the global level. I think it becomes extremely difficult at the national level, at the regional level, to actually implement what people agree on. Then the other problem I have with these global agreements is that in many ways it is top-bottom. Now I realize that this may be the only pragmatic way of getting the world to take some steps together towards a desirable end. I realize that we may not really have another solution, to such global treaties if the problem at hand is global in nature. But what I also realize is that sometimes we do this at the expense of bottom-up approaches that can actually work. People would point to, to events like the World Social Forum, which I believe try to operate on this principle that let us bring the people of the world together. Let these people of the world discuss issues and let them find a way forward. I don't want to talk about the successes or failures of the World Social Forum or any other events that have tried to have this bottom-up approach. But all I'm saying is that it is extremely important for people of the world to realize that they have to start reaching out to each other, because the only globalization that we've had until this point was business-oriented, where we had more and more of global trade. And we have many proponents and opponents of this globalization as we know it. But I think until the people of the world start relating as brothers and sisters in the family of humanity, then it's going to be extremely difficult to solve these problems that are global in nature. We need the people of Denmark to realize that their fate is tied to the fate of the people of Kenya. We need the people of Norway to realize that what happens in Mali affects them one way or another. And we need them to realize this not because their president tells them so, not because a certain activist tells them so, but because they have experienced it, because they have seen it. Now, how does this happen? I believe this happens when there's a lot more interaction between the people of Mali and the people of Norway, the people of America and the people of Uganda, the people of Bolivia and the people of Australia. So for me, what I'm really looking at is how do we enhance this interaction? Now, it already happens. It happens many times. Like every time you have an event like the Olympics or like the World Cup, there's a lot of interaction that takes place, not because there's a 10-point strategy on how to bring people of the world together, but because they are unified by a common cause. In this case, it is sports, it is football, it is athletics. And I think we need to borrow from that. We need to learn a little something from that. That for people of the world to start interacting more and more, we've got to build much, much more on the common grounds that we share, that we already share. Not because we were told that, hey, let's love football and let's, go to the World Cup, but this is a common ground. We share a common love for the game of soccer, the beautiful game. Or we share a common love for sports, whether it's athletics, whether it's rugby, whatever game it is. And because we share that, we actually interact in a very spontaneous fashion. This is the approach that I'm looking towards in this year, and I will do what has to be done together with others so that we may keep identifying this common ground that we share and make the most of it.